This is the Bad Batch podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back talking about Star Wars The Bad Batch Episode 3, Replacements.
Ignore the clone. We signed up to be soldiers, not an execution squad. We're going to detain the prisoners and take them in for questioning.
You want to know why they put me in charge? It's because I'm willing to do what needs to be done. Good soldiers follow orders.
Welcome back, fellow troopers. We're back with the third episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch Replacements on TV Podcast Industries. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow troopers. We're gonna crash. It's one of your other hosts, John.
And hello, I am Chris, and I have crashed.
Aww.
Just energy-wise. I need to bring it back.
Excellent. Well, it is Friday evening. We have all had long weeks of work, but happy May 14th, or May 14th be with you. I'm not going to do that again.
No, don't.
No,
that's
not
totally wrong.
Okay.
So wrong.
Yeah, because it's just like, it sounds like a teenager force. So it's like May the 14th. So it's just like the force is pimply. It's kind of emotional, you know?
Okay.
You know? It's going
like
through his
me.
adolescent, preteen years. It's
That's
a
like
teenager.
me.
Yeah.
Maybe. After this week, that's me. Pimply and emotional.
Yeah, it's been a long week, but we are here with another good episode of Bad Batch to talk about. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do over on tvpodcastindustries.com. You can find our coverage of loads and loads of different shows over there, and can follow all of our coverage as it's released for Star Wars The Bad Batch. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any thoughts you have on The Bad Batch or any of the shows we cover. You can also come and join us over at our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. And we'll have spoiler posts up there every week for each of the episodes of the shows we cover.
Yes. But Derek, I think we should rocket before our flux capacitor blows up into the episode details for episode 3, Replacements.
Different series.
Make
It's
it
just a
so.
capacitor this time. Rather than
rather
than a flux capacitor. I think that's Back to
Was
the
it
Future.
just, I thought it...
No, it was just here. I was like even going, wait, is he making a Marty McFly reference? Well, what did I not get here?
It's just a capacitor in Star Wars. That's all
is
it
it?
is. Yes, but this show, once again, exec producers for The Bad Batch are Dave Filoni and Jennifer Corbett. This episode was written by Matt Michnovetz. He was a writer on the final season of Clone Wars and the final season of Rebels, and he was also one of the many writers on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, an excellent game for the PlayStation and Xbox. If you haven't played it, go play it. It's really, really good.
It is very good.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
And among everything, the story itself is actually really enjoyable as well. Not just the gameplay, the story that was put together for it was really good. So delighted that they brought over one of the Clone Wars writers and Rebels writers to help write that story. That's kind of cool.
It's all connected.
It is kind of all connected, yes. The episode was directed by Nathaniel Villanueva, who directed episode 1 of The Bad Batch as well. John, do you want to give us the synopsis for The Bad Batch episode 3, Replacements?
Sure. In their escape from the New Empire on Saleucami, the Bad Batch's ship took heavy damage. With Tech unwilling to help Echo complete repairs, their ship, the Havoc Marauder, crash lands on a seemingly desolate planet. When a key capacitor gets stolen by an energy-loving native called Ordo Moon Dragon, Hunter has to retrieve it before they can take off. With Wrecker out of action after a knock on the head, Omega volunteers to go along on the mission. After Hunter is knocked unconscious by the Moon Dragon, Omega steps up and retrieves the stolen part, allowing the Bad Batch to get off the world. While they were away, Wrecker set up a room for Omega to make her feel at home and welcome her to the team. Meanwhile, on Kamino, Governor Tarkin wants to test a new group of top conscripted recruits brought to him by Vice Admiral Rampart. With former Bad Batch member Crosshair further reprogrammed by the Kaminoans as their leader, Tarkin sends them to complete the mission Hunter refused. They are to wipe out Saw Gerrera and his army on Onderon. When the new team arrives, they find a small group of Gerrera's troops evacuating the planet. Crosshair orders them to execute those that are left, but when one of the new recruits refuses, he's killed by Crosshair. The rest of the team are told a good soldier follows orders, and they complete the mission. As a reward for the performance of his clone-led elite squad, Vice Admiral Rampart is promoted to Admiral.
Thanks for that, John. Hidden in the synopsis there, the new soldiers complete their mission, as in slaughter a lot of innocents in this episode. Quite a dark, quite a dark episode in points, and quite a light episode in other points.
Yes, I probably shouldn't laugh there, but no. I mean, this is the only cartoon that can both combine the slaughter of non-combatants to a cozy interior design for children. Yes, it was quite some feat, dare I say.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Chris?
It's definitely a tale of two halves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to save my overall thoughts. It is very mixed.
Yeah.
In that, there is some very dark overtures coming through in this. Well, mostly in the Crosshair kind of storyline.
Exactly.
And then you've got the happy-go-lucky Omega and learning from Hunter and everything's going to be okay and it's all fun and she's now part of the batch and she has her own room. And I'm like, they're meshing it okay, but it's just that there's a very evident schism in the stories. Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah, Chris, totally know what you mean about it being a show of two halves this episode. Let's get into those two halves. Let's talk about our first blaster point number 1. Let's talk about one half of that story, really, all about the crash landing on this unnamed planet, as the Bad Batch are escaping still from Saleucami from the last episode. They went there to find some help, escaped because the Empire were there locking down the planet effectively, and on their way out of there they took some hits on their ship and now crash land on the planet. I love the opening interaction here between each of the Bad Batch. We now have 3 members of the former Bad Batch plus Echo, and we have Omega as well, now a new member of the team. But I like the kind of interplay between the characters. Everybody gets their moment. They're all kind of starting to stand out from each other quite a lot now. I like the idea of Echo going and trying to fix the ship, and you have Tech, who is the person that should be fixing the ship, kind of going, yeah, but there's nothing really damaged here. There's no, it's not like the air is going to run out in us, so he's not helping at all. He's working on a new technical problem. He's working on whether the chips need to be analyzed, whether they're going to control the Bad Batch in future. So that's his job. And he's like, well, I checked. There's no dire problem for us here, as the ship goes to crash land on the planet, basically. So I thought that was quite a fun little moment between those characters, particularly.
It was fun. It's for me. I'm actually enjoying Wrecker more as a kind of the standout. That kind of back in the kind of D&D high fantasy, he would be the oath barbarian. Yeah, kind of not dim, nice but dim. That type of character, which is like, he's really nice. He's a bit dim, but like put him in front of a steel wall and he'll rip it to shreds.
Absolutely. And I think he is supposed to be the one that everybody falls in love with. He's kind of got the heart of gold. He's the one that's kind of forming a relationship here with Omega in the episode as well. So I think he's the one that you're all supposed to love as an audience as well. Yeah.
It is. He is really just cute.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to wonder, Hunter as the leader, question mark, the grumpy loner wolf type. Is this going to be the kind of wolf and cub type scenario that we're going to get from a lot of this season? Sorry, for those who maybe not know what I mean, wolf and cub was this kind of, when we say wolf and cub, it comes out a lot in pop culture. It's back from a kind of samurai movies in the 60s, 70s, I think they were. And it was literally about a samurai and who was the wolf, and the cub was this little kid he was bringing around. Yeah. It's kind of an old story, got turned into movies. It's been translated into different versions. You think The Mandalorian is a wolf and cub type story. I'm wondering, is that what they're doing with the Omega and Wolf?
Yeah, I guess it's trying to replicate the Jedi and their Padawan as well, which is, of course, is riffing on the Wolf and Cub thing as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you certainly hear from Omega many times. She's kind of said to Hunter now, when she's been behind him, she's kind of said, oh, how did you do that? Show me how to do it. Maybe I can learn how to track like you do, kind of thing. Maybe I can learn the hand signals, I think she said in one of the previous episodes. What are those hand signals about? You see her kind of mimicking what Hunter's doing. So she's certainly taking to him as her father, or as her father figure, and learning from him and picking up these things. So I think I think you're right, Chris. I think that's going to be the approach for the rest of the season, at least, with her incorporating herself into the team.
Yeah, I mean, I also thought as well that we were going to see if she had any Jedi powers here when she was in the Moon Dragon's den, getting the capacitor back.
Yeah.
I definitely thought we were going to see something like that, but she's certainly resourceful, so maybe it's just that. And of course, back on Camino, the two Kaminoans are now talking about, having to get this group back. And I'm wondering, is it the Bad Batch, or are they specifically referring to Omega as this kind of new source of DNA for the clones? So, I mean, interestingly as well, they're not only being chased down by the Empire, or at least being watched out for by the Empire now, they're also going to have the Kaminoans onto them as well. So so I did think we were going to see Omega's powers as such if she were force sensitive.
It's a perfect setup for it, isn't it?
Yeah,
she's on her own in
exactly.
the cave, nobody else is around. There's going to be a moment where she pulls the capacitor towards her with her innate force abilities or something.
But I didn't really get anything.
No.
The only hint of powers, I guess, or fine-tuning from her genetics is her use of the blaster there in episode 1. That's still kind of the only hint there. So
because she didn't even use it this episode. She took the blaster from Hunter, but didn't use the blaster this episode. So we don't even get a repeat of her being able to use.
It almost looked like cowering in fear because there was a huge energy-eating monster was her power. That even the creature kind of was like, no, I can't kill this one.
Exactly.
So the kind of puppy dog eyes. But I guess it's also just this half of the episode is, it's still them figuring out her. So, and ultimately by the end of it, welcoming her to the Bad Batch team. With her having tracked the Moon Dragon and recovered the capacitor. So I guess that, and then also Wrecker understanding the fact that she isn't a soldier, because effectively he does try to steal her food.
Absolutely. It makes her sleep on the floor as well. This is not a good deal for Omega at the beginning of the episode.
I now am actually flipping. I think she may be, because of the empathetic, her being looking at the Moon Dragon and understanding it just wanted the energy. She's more empathetic. I think
mind reading abilities.
Or an empath type thing of kind of, we do know there have been some Jedi who are empaths.
Yes, absolutely. They can read the Force. They can read what's going on. Yeah.
Well, they can read just the emotions of people. And
so it still sounds very Star Trek. Again, all I can think of is Deanna Troi, Chris. When you say empath.
No, I'm not just saying that. But she can read the metachlorians.
Right.
I guess Jedi, they sense, don't they? So it may have just been she sensed the creature, this Moon Dragon, was just hungry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you still did it again. You say, I sensed, and that again brought back Deanna Troi from Star Trek 2. That's all I got in my head. I'm sorry, guys.
So for this half, that's pretty much the storyline for this part. They get the capacitor back, they fix it up, and off they go.
Yeah.
They do give her own room. She is, as you guys have said, she is becoming her member of the batch.
Yeah.
What I do question is they do need to solidify this story a bit more.
Yeah.
This part of it, they need to. Last episode kind of felt like that transitory kind of. They needed to get to cut in order to get to here, here, and this is okay. They need to go one more place. Oh well, we're going to crash, and that's going to stop one episode.
We don't even know where they're going yet.
Yes, exactly.
After going to visit Cut,
that was the only thing they had. They were trying to get away from Camino, go visit Cut. They got to him, and then we have no idea what their next destination
we're not,
is. What their next
we're not clear what their
is,
objective is yet. But I think as well, this feels very familiar. I mean, I'm even there thinking, you know, like with Caleb in the first episode, the Padawan Jedi, I'm like going, oh, that'd be great to have him back. And it could be, you know, if this is a 16 episode series, it could be in episode 12 that we see him again. And like, it almost feels like you do get longer turnarounds on the arcs of some of these things. Like it can almost like drop out of sight that ever happened in episode 1. And then literally the last 2 episodes, there will be that reconnect and it will turn into something epic. I always remember that from like Rebels and Clone Wars, that things that happened ages ago, it seemed, just because as well, you know, such long series. But it could even be from other series suddenly like kick in at this moment and it kicks something off. So I wonder whether there might be that kind of formula being sort of maintained a bit with this as well.
Well, as if to confirm that, remember last episode with Cut, that was a storyline dropped in season 2.
Well, exactly.
Which is about 9 years ago. Remember, there's a big break in the Clone Wars as well that didn't come out every single year. So about 9 years ago, you saw a character for one episode that was brought back. Whatever, 9 years later, basically. So entirely possible that things will be dropped and put up. But you're absolutely right, Chris. I totally agree with you. And I think, John, you're the same because we were talking about it separately. We do need to just at least know where they're trying to go to, just so we have something in our mind. Oh, they didn't get to whatever planet it is they're going to this week, but we don't know what their plan is. All we know is that they're on the run. And they don't seem too concerned about that. No. They don't seem to be saying, we need to get further away from there even, so that we escape the Kaminoans or the clone army that's coming after us. Something like that. They just feel like they're floating aimlessly in space and they crash land on a planet. But it's, you know, again, early in the series, I'm sure we'll get some more of that stuff as we build into the series.
But I think, like, I mean, I guess before going on to Blaster Point 2, which to me is the meat and two veg, I guess, of this episode. The one thing of this crash landing, the whole animation of the breathing in the masks actually was, I must say, really quite cool. Because I don't think I've ever seen that before. Where you see the breath hitting the mask.
On both Hunter and Omega, you see them breathing in and out, and it's just such a good animation touch to make it feel more realistic. Like, remember, they're still using the same style of animation as Clone Wars, with a bit of an upgrade, obviously. But it's the same style of animation, and it just makes it feel more real world when you add in a detail like that, which they absolutely do not need to add in, but showing the breathing of those characters, that was a really great touch.
Definitely. The only thing I wasn't entirely clear on was why they required masks and Echo and Tech didn't when they went outside the ship. But it could just be for longer periods of time.
Maybe.
They both wore them.
I thought both of them wore them,
I didn't notice it because I was just there thinking, that kind of didn't make sense to me. But okay, I may have just missed that.
Right.
Yeah. It's still slightly weird to me that they are not wearing helmets, just breathers, on a theoretically what they call the moon. Not many moons have atmospheres. So I was just kind of like, it reminds me of a very much, I think it was Empire, where you have Luke and Han go out, and Millennium Falcon they go inside the asteroid
and inside the big worm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes sense because you're inside of a worm. You're inside an animal, like you're inside a biological. When they were just out on space,
worm, Chris?
I know, true. It's all space and sci-fi. I shouldn't question it.
I think for the purposes of Star Wars, I think that they don't throw on spacesuits very often.
No.
In those movies, we've seen them with breathers before in the movies, and that's all they've had. So you can make the assumption, since it's in a whole galaxy, it takes place in a whole alternate galaxy to our own, you can make the guess that they had landed on a planet that happened to be okay for them to not have to wear a helmet, but I get it. Another thing on the animation for this episode, I did love when the Ordo Moon Dragon, when it takes the energy from the torch. I love that the green energy passing through it. I thought that was a beautiful piece of art that they did there with that. I thought that was really nice.
It was really nice.
It just looked so... I don't even know how to... I was going to say illuminating, but that's a terrible pun, because it obviously is illuminating in the dark. No, but it was just illustrative. It was just this. It was... You could see it kind of, the green colour take. And previously you would have just had a bloom effect on the kind of screen. It's like, even though it's travelling from one end of the animal to the other, which is a long dragon, it wasn't just a big green all splashed across the whole cave, inside cave. It actually tracked with the rest of it. That was one that stood out to me. I thought
it was a lovely scene. I thought it was going to kind of play out in a similar kind of Star Wars way, or these cartoon way, where this now becomes the companion of Omega, and she brings it back on board the ship and they go off. I thought it was going to be something like that with the story, but the fact that it is just a hungry creature trying to get a capacitor to take the energy from it. She gives it the torch and then off they go. They get the capacitor back and off they go.
And I think the problem I have is I'm looking at this description of a creature that consumes pure energy and thinking, how does that work? How does the biology of, like, I kind of get caught up a bit in like going, that is really cool, but at the same time, I'm like going, surely it wants, like, it's a carnivore or a herbivore or an omnivore or something like that, like eating like a battery, I guess. Like, so I was like thinking, because we require energy, but it's like not in its pure form. I don't stick my tongue into a socket to kind of... I could do, and I would turn out really quite badly from that encounter. But it's like...
Podcast Industries does not encourage anybody to stick their tongue into a plug.
No, well, absolutely. So, like, all I can think of is kind of like, is it like troglodytes that kind of can live in nuclear reactors and the vacuum of space? Is it something that's kind of evolved from that or something?
Maybe. These are not the thoughts I was thinking we'd be having on this episode of The Bad Batch. So we probably should move on to Blaster Point 1. Blaster Point 2. I'll just remind you guys, this is the Star Wars universe. This is all the imagination of the writers.
Oh, so I know.
Things that don't make exact sense scientifically. That's not this show. That's Star Trek.
I will say it's a galaxy far, far away, not a universe or anything like that. It's just a galaxy far, far away. So theoretically, the rules of physics should apply.
It could be in a different universe, though. It's a galaxy far, far away, but could also be in a different universe.
Okay.
We may not be able to travel to it. In fact, I know 100%, unless you're traveling to one of the Disney worlds, you can't travel to Star Wars. Anyway, on to Blaster Point 2. I'm calling this The Rise of the Stormtroopers.
Ooh.
Which I kind of
Look at you doing film titles.
Yeah, I thought that was a good title for this, because we get the introduction of the conscripted soldiers for the first time, really. Yeah. So we've seen the clones obviously being the major army for the now Empire, I suppose, all the way through. And we got the introduction at the start of the season that, it's all a fiscal matter. It's all down to the money, for the Empire now. They're not willing to pay for, any new clones. So it's much easier to, encourage people to, become conscripted into this new army, or encourage people to volunteer, for a roof over the head and some food, to join this new army.
Yeah, because like Governor Tarkin is talking about the clones as being a relic of an old time or an old order. I'm like,
remember 3 weeks
hang
ago.
on, like this genetic cloning seems to be quite, at least for us, would be quite technical and, certainly at the time advanced. And I'm like going, yeah, I think Tarkin doesn't quite understand maybe how it works, but
can I throw a bit of Star Wars lore in?
Yeah, go on.
Just quickly. Remember Obi-Wan Kenobi found Kamino, this planet where an order had been placed for these clones centuries ago.
By a Jedi, yeah.
And they had continued to create the clones. So actually, the clone army was ready to go by the time he got there, wasn't it? It was pretty close to ready to go when he found them on Kamino. So they are technically an old technology that's been used to create the clone army. But it is interesting that he just willing to throw it all out and go, even though the Kamino constructors, I suppose, have been tooling it up and making things better. They've already created the Bad Batch with some experiments themselves. He's not one to listen to any of that. He's just going, costs too much, out the door. gonna go to every planet and just recruit new soldiers. That's much cheaper. All we need to do is give them food, and their home can be aboard our space station
and train them. And one of the stormtroopers does say, well, they give me a bed, roof over me, food, and a wage, effectively, which is more than the Republic could have done or did. So I'm like going, okay, the Republic really were bad employers,
Yep.
So, and it's kind of like that, whereas the clones are basically have, I guess, or the way I'm kind of understand it is they have no rights, because right from when they're born, they have been assigned that they are a trooper of whatever designation, and they are trained to do that, which sounds pretty efficient to me if I was an evil galactic empire or head of the armed forces in there.
Right, but the coffers are low, John.
And of course, as we hear on Camino, the original sample is beginning to degrade. And so I guess I guess as well, the Bad Batch, was it a freak of the cloning process that they turned out like this and have the enhancements rather than it being precisely determined by the Kaminoans? So I mean, interesting stuff. I guess it sometimes feels like maybe George Lucas just sort of wrote himself into a corner. It's like,
no,
we have these stormtroopers. Oh, but we had clone troopers. And actually, that sounds pretty cool. Now we've got the clone troopers, and it's like, oh, but we need to get to stormtroopers now. I know, we'll take something that is massively cool and just go, no. I mean, and I don't know why Tarkin is worried about the budget. He's about to do the Death Star, which I could imagine costs quite a lot of old Imperial credits.
That's what he's got to save for.
Well, I guess that's it.
Do you know how much a Lego model of that costs? Can you imagine on a massive scale, the size of a moon, how much it would cost to buy?
He's having to move the budget around so his auditors at the end of the year or can sign off his finances.
Okay, you're making that sound like the opening crawl of the Phantom Menace.
I was going to say, the Trade Federation. We need to get into the P&L of the Bad Batch.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting. You were saying that you think George Lucas wrote himself into a corner. I always thought that the idea of George Lucas creating the clone army, as being the precursor to stormtroopers, I always thought the reason why he created it was to explain away why the rebels blowing up the Death Star, killing all the stormtroopers in there, wasn't that bad. They're only clones. And then when they eventually went back and put it all together after the prequels, they went, oh no, there was still stormtroopers on there. So there's still conscripted army members on the Death Star, all murdered, or all died in the explosion of the Death Star. So he didn't actually end off cleaning up anything, even though he felt he was cleaning up stuff by sticking in the clone army. But anyway, that's so much Star Wars for this point that we're going to talk about.
So much accounting as well.
There's a lot of accounting.
Financial. I didn't know we get into the financials of running a galactic empire.
Did you
but
not,
now,
Chris?
Now
We've been
that we
podcasting
are
5 years
I
now.
know.
You knew we were going to get into this.
It's true. At some point.
The next episode, Tarkin will be working out the near present value of...
Wait, no, it's the capital gains on an individual, selling an individual...
the net
Death Star.
value.
You better be working on the insurance so you can build Death Star 2.
Yeah.
But it's called, we know that this whole project is called War Mantle, which is a pretty nice, I mean, good project name.
I like that name.
Yeah.
You need a good project name. You always need a good project name. That's half the battle.
Yeah.
Well, actually, half the battle in this case is they have hundreds of thousands of clones out there at this point.
Yeah.
Like, so the question I do have is, well, I'm actually interested to see where this goes, because we do know by the end of Return of the Jedi, or at least by the beginning of A New Hope, they are given a conscription number when they're born and things like that. So
when they're stolen from their families.
That's true. When they're stolen from their
it feels a
families,
bit like
excuse me.
the Roman army type thing. It's any planet or civilization that they subjugate, they kind of take, a certain bounty of the young, healthy stock in order to be a part of the army.
So this here is just the start of it. This is the disenfranchised people, the people that didn't really like the Republic, getting them on board to join the army, basically.
Yeah, because they didn't pay a living wage by the sounds of it.
The one aspect I'm quite happy they're showing is that the stormtroopers, or the baby storm. What do you call a baby storm? Like a barometric kind of up pressure.
A light rain.
A light rain. The light rain troopers.
I was thinking a dirty nappy and plenty of vomit. That would be a baby storm.
Trooper. But he always misses his mark. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is because at the end, as they do shoot, and as you guys said, they shoot, and they actively slaughter Saul Guerrera's innocents. Who, well, we know at least Saul Guerrera's got off planet. He had a couple of members of his rebels, or the beginning of rebels, trying to help, and there was just two innocents who were just trying to get off planet with them.
That's right.
Paying for transport.
Yeah.
And they exterminate them. So we've always kind of been led to believe the stormtroopers were kind of conscripted. They were bad guys, but there were some good guys in the bad guys. They were just doing their job. If you look at the Mandalorian season 2, where you see, like, there's a whole episode there where you get to see the stormtroopers celebrate by kind of doing things, and they're all human and they sit around a canteen. This is also reminding you, some of these guys have done war crimes. And these are 3 conscripts at the end, who basically slaughter innocents.
Yeah, but you're leaving out quite a big portion of that story, Chris. One of them refuses and is murdered by the clone leader of the group, which is Crosshair, who's now turned quite significantly. Like he when they went on the original mission with Hunter refused to kill Saul Guerrera and his team, and you saw from Crosshair that he was going against that, and now he repeats his line after one of the new recruits refuses. He repeats his line that a good soldier follows orders. So after the new leader, Crosshair, has killed a member of their team, the rest of them join in and follow his order effectively. So exactly to your point, Chris, these are people that are now going to follow orders because they've been told what they get if they don't follow orders. Because they were all standing back. They were all standing back, unwilling to follow the order. The new recruit that refused to take the order was telling them at the moment, let's not follow the orders of a clone. Let's the 4 of us leave together because he's just a clone. We don't respect his type of leadership, and then he gets killed. So
I was in my head. I was like, they could have overpowered Crosshair.
I think they were willing to leave.
Okay,
if Crosshair hadn't killed the member of their troop that turned against him.
Yeah, I guess it's also what you're willing to do. So I mean, there's certainly plenty of examples where soldiers have done atrocities. So I mean, it's not like this is the case that it can happen. I think it's reflecting on the previous moment where we see this group on Onderon, but with the Bad Batch. And in a sense, I guess, we do see Crosshair here having a bit more CAT scanning going on and a bit more work being done on his processor. And, you hear Tarkin saying it's kind of enhancing what they can do or making him more compliant, I guess. So the compliance is probably at least that if all 4 of them had turned against him, he would have shot all 4 of them. And going back to Camino, then poor Vice Admiral Rampart wouldn't have been promoted to Admiral Rampart, because his new kind of idea of getting this new armed force together wouldn't have fitted with what Tarkin wants. I mean, Tarkin is basically like, I guess, like,
we'll use your experience.
Himmler or like, from the Gestapo and the SS or something. He will do any means to get to his end, and so I think that's what would have happened. I think it's just showing that some of them will, and ultimately that's maybe what they're trying to find, though, because Tarkin is also willing to allow the clones. I thought there was going to be some massive massacre of the clones or something that we would see a bit, almost a bit like with Order 66. Right. There would be another order where they were like all shut down.
Order 60, Order 67. Shut yourself down. Throw yourselves off the space station.
But he is willing that they will be used until their usefulness has run out, which I guess is. They will do something to their inhibitor chip that allows them to do something similar to what Crosshair does, which is trying to get the right evil person through whatever means to be a stormtrooper.
Right.
I don't know. Okay. But I mean, that's what I'm thinking anyway. Yeah.
I think that is actually coming, though. I think they're building to that. Theoretically, there's hundreds of thousands of these clones. Mm-hmm. So we're, 20 years away from... Luke and the New Hope?
Yeah.
20 to 30 years?
I'd say so, at least. Admiral. So Tarkin was Admiral at the start of this series. He's now a governor. So the Empire's been split up into its different governors.
So, just with a quick check there, apparently we're about 19 years. So, you've got hundreds of thousands of clone troopers to be dealt with within 19 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've seen that the cloners are trying to look for new things. They're talking about the sample degrading. They're saying all these little things. I think potentially the overall storyline that is going to be of the Bad Batch is some point we're talking about P and L, and we're going to see the L of the clones, the loss of the clones, the death of the clones, and maybe it's a firing squad, or they get them all into one big room and Tarkin's there and he presses the kill switch, literally.
Maybe, or else it is just literally attrition. It's effectively pushing the clone army versus their new enemies, effectively, until they're all wiped out and replaced with stormtroopers. It could easily be just that, but I do think there's a big reckoning to come.
I'm just thinking the kill order. Sorry, this is really silly, but it is the kill order. I'm thinking of Tarkin having to how much money has been just lost to his accountant from all the loss of assets that he's doing here. The interesting thing for me is also the Kim and Owens as well, because it is there's a bit of a loose lips sink ships kind of thing going on here, true. Whereas Tarkin and Vice Admiral Rampart are quite open about kind of what they're planning, I guess, their strategy or whatever, right in front of the cloners. And so, it's not like they are. They talk about their survival depends on getting the Bad Batch, or at least one of them, back, so that they can, give an even better sample, or get a better sample of code so that they can clone better clone troopers. So, but I do think no wonder, the events of Rogue One, given how Tarkin and Rampart are just happily chatting about their military plans.
Well, absolutely. I do like the idea of having the cloners and Rampart kind of vying for the attention of Governor Tarkin.
Yeah,
I like the idea that each of them has kind of a plan to keep their idea going, and then it's because Rampart comes up with the idea of putting the two together, going, right, how about we use the experience of a good clone and our new conscripted army and put them together, and we'll get the best out of everything. So, so that's a really good idea. Yeah. One thing that did come out of this, and we will move on from our accounting discussion, but one thing that I will say that came out of this moment in here, you guys were absolutely right last week about why Cut didn't leave with the Bad Batch from the planet, or John, I think you particularly mentioned it, that he would have been terrified to leave with them. We see it here. We see these two people that are trying to take a trip off-world from Onderon. They're trying to leave with Saw Gerrera's troops, and they get slaughtered for it. So Cut was right not to leave with the Bad Batch when that was the right option. There was an option open to him. But if he had left and they'd been caught, his whole family could have been slaughtered by the troops, effectively.
Definitely,
so that was a good catch last week.
Definitely.
And I didn't see it in the episode.
I think, just quickly, the other thing is, there is an element right at the end where Crosshair has come back from that mission. He goes back to his quarters, and it's difficult to know because Crosshair is a fairly stern-looking member of the Bad Batch. But you have at least Wrecker, but I think all of the other members of the Bad Batch are missing Crosshair that we see on the Marauder, the Havoc Marauder. But also, I think right at the end, he's looking at who's going into the bunks there, which aren't his former team. He takes a glance at all the tally of successful missions that they've returned back from, and kind of sits down and, in his bunk. I guess being as emotional as Crosshair can be. So I guess there's a little bit of, he's missing his former team a bit as well.
Yes.
Or I could be totally wrong there.
I would say that, and it does kind of lead on to our blaster point number 3. Let's talk about chips. Love chips. It's Friday night. Let's talk about some chips.
Nachos.
Chips and fish.
Mayo.
Chips inside heads, because all the way throughout the episode, as I mentioned earlier on, we have Tech working on the chips, trying to work out what's going on with these chips that are in their brains. They learn a bit more detail from Omega. She tells them that the chip is what is controlling them. They had suspected it. You hear Echo saying, "I wonder if that's what happened to Crosshair." And she says, "Absolutely, that's what the chip is for." Effectively, it's supposed to be controlling them. And you hear them kind of coming to the conclusion then maybe if they do something about the chip, or if something happens with the chip, could that bring Crosshair back to the group? So I'm wondering if we'll see Crosshair flip back over to the Bad Batch at some point in the future. If Tech keeps working on that chip and comes up with a way to fix it, will he be the savior of the clones? Will he be someone that's able to free them from this chip that's now controlling them all? I wonder if that's a way they're going to go with the series.
That would be a pretty big storyline, actually.
You gotta have something for the show. You gotta have something big for the show, and I wonder if that's why they're focusing on it so much. On the chip itself, we also have something else going on with Wrecker in the episode that we should talk about here, because I think it's related to the chip. As they go in for the crash landing, you see, it's the comedy moment where you hear Wrecker say to say out loud, "We're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die," and then he looks at Omega and goes, "We're gonna be fine," and then hits his head off the bulkhead inside the ship. And for the rest of the episode, it's constantly referencing the fact that he's getting headaches, that he's feeling pain in his head, possibly around the chip. So I do think this idea of the chip in their brain that made them carry out Order 66 for everybody else except for the Bad Batch, I think that's going to come in and form a big part of the arc of what's happening with Tech and the Bad Batch for the rest of the season. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely. It was
definitely.
so signposted in this episode with Wrecker holding his head right around where the chip is. I mean, it could even just be, we know Tech's working on his device to be able to modify or remove or whatever it is.
Analyze.
I think,
analyze versus modify.
And we know that Echo has had his removed.
Yep.
But I just wonder whether, we'll get the sort of the tense situation of Wrecker suddenly turning on his group here. Absolutely. He's obviously, as you say, he's the dumb ogre one from Dungeons and Dragons, so he's a formidable opponent.
But he's also the lovable one. So for the audience, it's like there's the big cuddly teddy bear that's
turned into Chucky.
That's getting really close to Omega. He's the one that welcomed her to the team, built a room for her, and then Chip flips on and he tries to kill the team. I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah, I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
John jokingly said, that's what signpost. I literally do think it is. And I think you do have to forget, they're trying to weave a kid's story, an all ages story, at the same time as a storyline for adults of all ages and type of thing. And they are signposting it that for those who have watched other films and other TV shows, and the other writers you can see where they're going. I think the mid-season finale is basically Wrecker going bad, or them having to stop Wrecker and turn him back, and Omega does the no kind of you were one of us, and then suddenly he's good again. That's, I think, what will happen. He'll get hit in the head again. Maybe that's where her power flares on and she smacks him with she uses the force to pull or throw something at his head, and it switches the switch back off.
Yeah.
With Crosshair, I think he's bad until the end. He's bad right till the end, and then you get the Darth Vader moment. You get he sacrifices himself to save Omega, he defies orders to save the Bad Batch.
Right.
And he is lost to that, and he is forever remembered.
I wonder about the length of those arcs, because I'm not sure. I think they might bring back the Bad Batch together as a group at some point. That is the show, and I know we've already lost Crosshair out of that team already, so I think they might, at some point over the season, we might get the full team back together as Crosshair.
He's too mean. He's too mean for a kid's show.
I don't think he is. I think right now he's under control, and he feels meaner than he actually is. Very calculating character, as we've seen him before. But yeah, it'll be intriguing to see, but I think the chips are really important. I wanted to make sure that we call them out in this episode, as we're 3 episodes in.
Yes, chips really are important.
Chips are. I did have a discussion about the kind of the targeting, I suppose, of this episode with Matt Murdock over on Twitter, who sent us some thoughts about who is the target audience for this show. And I think this is a good point as we close out the discussion about the episode. A good point to have a chat about that here. I would think that fundamentally, when Dave Filoni did his version of Clone Wars and Rebels, they tended to be targeted, the first seasons particularly tended to be targeted at kind of preteens and their parents who were Star Wars fans. And as the episodes went on, or the seasons went on, they grew with those preteens. So by the time the series was finished, they were about 18, 19 years old. And I think the stories were kind of reflecting that. They were at least 16, let's say, as the show got on. So the stories that were there in the 6th and 7th season of Clone Wars and the 4th season of Rebels were much more targeted to that age group as they finished. And I think with the Bad Batch, what's been happening is the show's being targeted as those fans who watch the Clone Wars, plus it's trying to bring in that new younger audience that's coming to it for the first time as well. And I think for this episode, I don't think they hit the balance very well in this episode, because you are trying to satisfy adults, fans that saw all of Clone Wars, which got quite dark, and you're also trying to satisfy a new audience that are coming on for the cute new character that's joined this team and her friendship with this ragtag band. And I do think that it's a little bit of a mismatch in this episode. Yeah,
I completely agree. I am slightly fearful of a incident an episode type of show right now, because it's 14 episodes, where it's the Scooby-Doo Monster of the Week incident. Oh no, we crashed on this. Oh no, we need to go. We've gone to this village and these people need help. And they stretch for the next 10 episodes.
Okay.
Or 8 episodes, all of these incidents type things, and then only move the big story at episode 13, 14.
I think that is actually going to be the show. What I'm really speaking about is the difference between having a story where the young kid character saves the Bad Batch, which is a story that you would show to preteens or you'd show to very young cartoon fans, versus a story where 5 innocents get slaughtered in this episode. That's something that I feel the balance is off on in terms of the audience you're looking at. You have quite a serious adult story versus a kid story stuffed into a cartoon.
Well, at least they didn't show the slaughter.
Absolutely,
I guess.
yeah.
At least they pulled the camera away.
Of course.
I mean,
And
but
I
I definitely get it. It is a diverse mix of what you've gotten in these two halves of this episode, for sure. I mean, I guess, yeah, it's the appropriateness of that for children, but I think as well, if kids have watched the prequels, I mean, they ultimately do get a certainly more vivid around the warfare. I mean, there's that one from the episode 2 with where they're fighting on the insect planet. I can't remember what it's called, but like just the amount of the barrage of the clone troopers going in against the droid army. But you've got the slaughter of the Jedi as well. You've got the slaughter of the Jedi kids in the temple in Revenge of the Sith. So that's kind of there. And I guess it is a little bit of a difficult tightrope to walk between, I guess, what happens on the moon where the ship has landed and what's going on Onderon and at the command of Crosshair. But I kind of feel it's also important to have that as well. Maybe it's one episode like that and one more like, what happens on the moon. But it is kind of important because I think that it is the Galactic Empire and they are pretty evil. So they need to show that evil and that it potentially has consequences. Like in this case, probably for Crosshair, like Tarkin effectively going down with the ship in episode 4 on the Death Star was his consequence for what we can see is pretty, despicable and heinous. Yeah, great word. Heinous life.
Personally, as I say, I have no issues with this balance here that's happening. I know these episodes are going to be moments of the week, characters of the week, but also I love seeing a bit of darkness in there. We're talking about characters that were based on the Nazi army with the stormtroopers, so you should be seeing them get worse and worse as these shows progress, of course. But I'm just wondering about the target audience of this. There's going to be some people watching this that probably didn't think their kids were going to be seeing people go, please don't shoot me, and then them dying, and their parents having to explain to them, where have they gone? But I just wanted to have that
they didn't show it.
Exactly. But I did just want to have the discussion about it on this episode.
They better not read any history then.
Yes.
But the planet you were thinking of was Geonosia, John.
That's it, Geonosia.
Yes.
So we have the Geonosian arena where all the Jedi's slaughter was happening and fighting was happening. Yeah.
As we wrap up, I'm just going to close on. I have no problem with the Incident Scooby-Doo episode of the week. That was The Flash. That's a lot of other shows. I'm on board with that. It's the little kid saves the big universe every week. Like the Omega, the character identified. I think it can't just be Omega saves it consistently. It needs to be Hunter does it, Crosshair does it, Tech Health does it. Like, it needs to be about the Bad Batch. Otherwise, it's the Omega and Bad Batch show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's it.
And I'd agree. We're going to see them using their different skills each week as they build out their characters as well. We're probably going to see different things done as the show goes on. Any closing thoughts on the episode? What did you think overall of the Bad Batch episode 3, The Replacements? Chris?
I defend it. I do. Look, this is a well-written show. It's struggling with its duality. And I think that's the problem. I am very much of the opinion that they need to pick a lane or an audience, I should say. I would love to see something very much like the Omega show, and that would be good for bringing those up and coming like preteens into the Star Wars universe, like the droids and all that fun stuff, and then bring them in. And you can have healthy, young, fun aspects of the Bad Batch, but I also think you need what we have now, which is this like 16 plus Nazi discussing the atrocities of war pretend like that's the show I'm here for. That's what I'm so interested. Like that darkness in the universe told in a very written in an amazing way.
Right.
That's what I'm kind of thinking. So I, like the show, have a duality of opinion. So that's kind of what I think. Johners, what about yourself?
Yeah, I really like this episode. I would give it 3.5 remaining stormtroopers out of 5. I would have given it 3 if I thought it should be 3, but let's just say half of them made it out alive from that. But I really like that side of it, and I guess that's coming from sort of the over 16's sort of target audience. I really like seeing this idea of the building, the developing of this galactic empire that, of course, we all kind of saw in such stark, immediate terms with, Vader coming onto Princess Leia's ship and all of that kind of thing. I find that, that's really good, but it's also being done in a really cool way through Crosshair, through this mission, to see, how well stormtroopers, are in the field. I liked the crash on the moon and everything. I like that developing kind of side of the Bad Batch and Omega, becoming a team, and sort of understanding one another. I think what I need to just understand better, is what are the Bad Batch doing? I got the hint from this one that with all the talk about the chip, Tech working on his device and all of that, and the talk around Crosshair about missing him, that they ultimately will head back to Camino to try and get him, reason with him. But is that going to be something that's mentioned in the next episode or in 7 episodes? So in the immediate term, what's their plan? Because you would say they're on the run from Tarkin, from Clone Army, but we don't see anyone tracking them. Like in a lot of cases where they've been on the run, you've also had the, their antagonist tracking them down, and Crosshair's not even doing that. They're not sending him out. Maybe that will happen next time.
I think that will
come, but it's just like that side of it just kind of got undermined a bit for me with it's just like Crash Land on the Moon of the week, I guess, with Creature of the Week. But I like the stuff just personally around the Bad Batch and Omega. So yeah, I'd give it 3.5 remaining Stormtroopers out of 5. I enjoyed it. Derek, what are your thoughts?
I think I already mentioned this. This is my favorite episode since the opener. The opening episode, the hour and a half kind of movie that we saw, that really felt like 3 episodes. The opener of that, where you had the big moment of Order 66. That had to accomplish a point of setting up the season. This is a normal episode for the season. This is the type of episode I would expect to see, where something's going on with the Bad Batch and something's going on with the Empire. Just a little surprised at how disjointed the two of them were. That's my only complaint about the episode, but I really enjoyed it. As a Star Wars fan for my entire life, I know it has really light moments that are for kids, and I know it has really dark moments that are for adults. Just the balance seemed a little bit off in this episode. That's the only thing. But my favorite one so far. So hopefully it'll keep up at this kind of pace in these 22 to 27 minute episodes for the rest of the season. Really enjoying it. Thanks so much, guys. Really good to chat about another episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. We do have a little bit of feedback. We got an email in from Victor, who says, "Greetings, troopers. A fellow defender here signing up with the troopers. I really enjoyed The Bad Batch in the last season of Clone Wars. Crosshair seemed destined to oppose the Batch. Very sad. Tarkin must be using him as a warm-up for dealing with Darth Vader. Nice to see Caleb as a young Padawan. Sorry we didn't get to see him again in Clone Wars. I found Omega annoying at first, but she won me over with her weapon skills. All in all, another great Dave Filoni production. Happy to be with you, troopers. Cheers, Victor Von Doom."
Great stuff. Thanks, and great to have you on board, fellow trooper, Victor. Yeah, I think, Caleb as well, for me, is the standout, and that's just because I'm head over heels on Rebels. I think, Omega is certainly, it's a difficult one to pitch, actually, having, the kid join the clones. And I think her story is moving along, at least the dynamics between her with the Bad Batch. So, Dave Filoni, an absolute master, I think, in terms of what he does. And I'd say, I think this is still very early days for me on this type of thing. And I'm expecting it to be, increasingly get epic.
Right, okay. Aiming for
epic. I do.
Aiming for really good.
Really good. And then when I sit back and think about it, it'll be like, oh my goodness, that was epic. Like I got in Rebels and Clone Wars. But I'm probably setting myself up for a massive, massive fall. But I hope not.
No, in Filoni we trust.
Exactly.
I think that's the best. It's like I think he has had enough wins and enough. He has shown us enough for me to go. I trust. I'm willing to give this the next 11 episodes. So that's why I'm here. Yeah. So definitely thank you, Victor, and glad to have you with us on this one as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The big worry really with Filoni shows and the animated shows is that you jump off too soon and you never get to the epic part.
Yeah,
that's always
or
the big
there's
concern.
no statuettes of them, like Rebels.
That's right. That was really disappointing for you, wasn't it?
Yes.
Give it time. Over on Facebook, we also got some feedback from Dan Lee, who said, "Yikes! Crosshair went from 0 to Vader pretty damn fast. I'm really hoping that future episodes have a bit more purpose. So far, it feels a bit aimless."
Aimless is a really good word for that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, when you're talking about Crosshair, aimless,
that's very good. I'm sure Dan meant that.
Absolutely.
Very
good stuff. Yeah, he really did go from 0 to Vader, but at least we got the sense that in this episode, at least, that his Vaderness was a product of
the chip.
The messing around with the chip,
exactly.
I guess.
Exactly.
So hopefully he can be reconciled to his, zero-ness, I guess.
Yes. Or maybe hero-ness.
Yes.
Maybe he goes from 0 to Vader to hero, maybe is the plan. Excellent stuff. Thanks for that, Dan. One final piece of feedback over on Twitter. Doug Green said, "I see the puppet thing now. You have ruined my adulthood." This is when we mentioned last week that the models for the Clone Wars seem to be coming from wooden puppets. So we've ruined it for Doug. Sorry, Doug.
I'm not sorry.
John, I'm going to have to stop saying that this is our last piece of feedback when we record our podcast, because we always get feedback in after we've recorded.
That is true.
Absolutely. But thanks so much for everybody that's been sending in their feedback. We got some feedback over on Facebook. Richard Blaze, first off, says, "I found the catch-up of Crosshair and the Empire far more interesting than the generic storyline with the rest of the Bad Batch. If it plays out, can't see the Kaminoans lasting long either. A double cross of the Empire and they are done for. Mass execution style by the new elite troopers. Also, a whole episode about a damaged ship and lack of power, but they seem to have cobbled together plenty of lights for Omega. What the bloody hell is powering them? The Force?" Thanks, Richard.
Absolutely. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think the Empire Crosshair storyline is really... It kind of feels like that connects much more to the wider, the more epic nature of Star Wars, of what's going on in the galaxy. And it becomes much more intimate. But it is, it's very generic. The story with the Bad Batch and with Omega.
And I don't think it would take too much to fix it either. As we said, I think it's just having a little more knowledge about what they're actually doing, whether they're being chased or going somewhere. I think would just add enough to it that having a side story like this wouldn't feel as just generic. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. And I think the Kaminoans, it's they're on a knife edge to how they are going to turn out. But certainly, I think, as I was saying, loose lips sink ships, with Tarkin and Rampart, basically discussing quite openly the Galactic Empire's strategy for their military development. At least the Kaminoans have got the intel in which they can at least try and have the best chance of surviving the evil Galactic Empire.
Galactic insider trading. I like it. I think at the end they did restore power to the ship, which is why the lights were working though, Richard. But I guess that Wrecker was working in the dark.
I would say so. Yeah, Bob Phillips says, "This one had a mid-season Iron Fist feel about it. Ooh. I'll keep watching, but in the vague hopes someone remembers that the story needs to go somewhere that isn't just round and around the garden like a teddy bear, one step, two step, murder a bunch of defenseless civilians." Absolutely. No, I think Bob totally right there. I think, we kind of alluded to this really in the podcast, that then we don't actually know where the Bad Batch are going. Given that this is called Star Wars The Bad Batch, it's a little interesting that the Empire storyline about a much wider element certainly had the greater interest, at least for me. I know it involves Crosshair, who is one of the Bad Batch, but I think the Bad Batch needs to be more front and center, with, I think, Crosshair hunting them down, really can provide some tense exchanges, really. And maybe that's the next mission that Tarkin will send him on. And also that, yes, have Omega, but she shouldn't be the focus. I think she needs to develop as the focus. I guess being accepted as part of the Bad Batch as a new member, then I guess that's the good time for her to sprout. Yeah, it probably speaking of gardens.
Yeah, it probably feels a little longer into the season because we had those initial 3 episodes followed by what's called episode 2 and episode 3. So we kind of feel like we're 5 episodes into the season, so it probably feels a bit longer into the show as well. But hopefully by next week it'll feel a little less aimless, as I think Dan Lee said in his feedback. Diana Maskell says, this episode was not my favourite, but there were some interesting parts and a lot of important groundwork was laid. While the Bad Batch's moon landing was pretty boring, it was important to contrast to Crosshair. Tech testing the inhibitor chip in contrast to what was happening on Kamino, or on Onderon for that matter, was an important point. Wrecker did no wrecking this episode, but even his simple, straightforward manner displayed humanity and individuality in several ways, from not accepting Omega's food, to reassuring her during the crash landing, to making her a place of her own. I understand Echo's annoyance, but Tech is absolutely right that learning more about those inhibitor chips is essential to everything beyond simple preservation of life. Some other important moments include the continued exploration of Squad equals family. They miss Crosshair and want to save him. I am definitely getting some Winter Soldier vibes here. Even as Omega reminds the Squad repeatedly that it isn't Crosshair's fault, I keep thinking about the Bucky-Steve conversation when Steve tells Bucky it wasn't his fault, and Bucky replies, but I did it. Rampart's plan is definitely of the evil variety. All the savings of human troopers versus the cost-prohibitive clones, with all the control offered by an inhibitor-chipped clone leader. This is the dream of every villainous leader he has dreamed. I am very curious about the new Kaminoan initiative to replace the degraded Jango Fett genetic material and continue to be intrigued by Omega's special power. She is definitely more intuitive. Are they laying the seeds for the reveal that she's force sensitive? Sorry that my thoughts were not more organised, but I just wrapped up semester grades and my brain is fried. Clearly, there was more going on here than I thought. Definitely some things to consider as we move forward with the series. Why was Omega not given an inhibitor chip? Or is she just an extensive field test to see what happens? Some great thoughts there, Deanna.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the interesting thing around Omega is, what type of clone is she ultimately? She's certainly not coming from the Jango Fett genetic code, but certainly... who was the source of that genetic material for Omega and what powers does she have? And does she not have this inhibitor chip as well?
Yeah. It feels like the fact that she knows that there is an inhibitor chip and that it's programmed, that the clones are programmed with it and they have to do what it says. It feels like all of that means she doesn't have an inhibitor chip. So that's a really interesting point.
And I like your idea that the Kaminoans possibly let her escape on the basis that they could field test her with the Bad Batch, because now they're looking at least to try and bring them back. And it feels like they've got, it's a bit like with the Millennium Falcon with the homing beacon on board, so the Empire could track that. Maybe there's something that the Kaminoans can do to find them much more easily and bring them back so that they can use the DNA. But I mean, that's the other aspect of the Kaminoans is, because they just say we only need one of them.
Yeah.
But does that mean they're going to prioritize getting Omega back, or is it just
any one of
the Bad Batch? Exactly. Yeah. For sure. And yes, Rampart's plan is definitely of the evil variety.
Interesting connection there, Deanna, with the Steve Bucky conversation about whether he's in control, and even if he isn't in control, he still did it, so that will cause some problems with him. That's a really interesting call out. Thanks for that, Deanna.
Yeah, thanks so much, Deanna. Back over on email, Victor sent his thoughts on episode 3 as well. Victor goes, greetings, troopers. I like this adventurism of Omega, and I'm looking forward to her reveal. Is there any hope for Crosshair's return to the Batch? His conditioning appears to have taken hold. Who is the superior clone the Kaminoans are looking for? Perhaps Boba? Where is he anyway? A foundling of the Mandalorians. As always, I look forward to your podcasts and the great trooper feedback. Cheers, Victor Von Doom. Thanks, Victor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. The superior clone. Is it the Bad Batch? Because they have this independence of thought. They can be more creative in the field, or is it Omega?
It feels like a single person they're
yes,
talking about when they say
exactly.
It's the superior clone. The superior clone. So that to me means Omega.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. But then what's the source of her code again? A bit like, with Deanna as well. So definitely. And on Crosser, it's interesting. They've definitely, deepened, heightened the conditioning of Crosser, as we see in this episode. But it's just that image of him at his bunk. I guess having looked at the tally of all the missions, seeing that it's not his Bad Batch that are going into the other bunks, despite all their ensigns that are kind of painted on the walls and all this kind of stuff. I'm wondering if, despite the enhancing of the inhibitor chip by Tarkin and the Kaminoans, that there's a part of him, it's that element of that part of him that can be brought back. Is he just thinking about it as he sits down on his bunk at the end of the episode? So some good thoughts there, Victor. Thanks so much.
And it does feel like there's always going to be hope for Crosshair to return.
You would think so.
That there may be a return. He is conditioned, as you say, and he has got a chip controlling him. So that's all possibilities for ways that he can come back. I just realized there that a lot of the actress who's playing Omega's voice, her New Zealand accent is starting to affect me. I'm starting to call her Amiga, like a 1990s computer. Omega is her name. As for Boba Fett, at this stage, didn't Boba Fett appear as a kid in Attack of the Clones? So that's episode 2, probably a couple of years, maybe, or months before this. I can't remember how long exactly the Clone Wars goes on, but I only think it's about 2 or 3 years. So he's still quite young.
And Boba was a clone of Django that they gave to, the Kaminoans gave to Django.
Yes, he was a direct clone. He was the only one that wasn't enhanced in any way.
Yes.
That's right. But he's out there somewhere, but a very young kid still, probably, early teens, I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks once again, everybody, for sending your feedback and any thoughts you have about the show and about our podcast. Please email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Come join us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. We'd love to talk to you over there about the Bad Batch as well.
Yes, but you can also, if you feel like it, head on over to patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries.com. No, it's patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. I had to get the singing in. It's been so long. The Rebels and Clone Wars and the Bad Batch fellow troopers have not heard my terrible singing, so therefore I had to get it in right now.
We have our own planet destroyer.
Yes.
Much it's our own secret weapon.
Yeah, it is a Death Star. It's
usually secret because I edit it out most of the time, but I'm not going to be able to edit that out. Anyway, yes, if you do want to support us, you can support us on a monthly basis by going over to patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. Support us for any amount over there. And if you just want to make a one-off donation to keep the podcast going and keep me in caffeine, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/tvpi and buy us a coffee over there.
But otherwise, you can support us on any good or evil Jedi or Sith loving podcast catcher of your choice, because sharing the podcast is sharing the what?
Love. Love, 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 love. That was trying to be in the Star Wars theme tune, but it was really bad. Thank you so much, fellow troopers, for following along, listening to us and our thoughts on this episode. We'll be back next weekend with our chats about Star Wars The Bad Batch Episode 4, which airs May 21st.
Thanks for joining us. Talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow troopers, for joining us. It's a pleasure chit-chatting with you, as always. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep being bad. Batch.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.